two ways. The vertical measurement taken along the body and the horizontal measurement taken across the body. So we take off with the horizontal, or rather vertical measurement. So in the vertical measurement, you start off with the shoulder blade, the shoulder, this collarbone here. You just raise the tape a little bit higher on the collarbone, across the breast, down like this. So every measurement you take from the shoulder along the body down to the toes are the vertical measurements. So from the shoulder, we take off from the shoulder to the bust point. The fullest part of the bust is the bust point, or what we call the nipple. Then to under bust. Here you take the tape, guide the tape to the under bust. From there, you check on your client the narrowest part. The narrowest part at this point is called the waist. So the narrowest part, you check the measure, that is the vertical measurement from this point to the waist. You note it. In this case, it is 15 inches. Then down to the stomach, the fullest part of the stomach, you take the measurement. Then to the hip, the fullest point of the hip, you take the measurement. Then to above the knee here, the fullest point above the knee, making sure that your tape is still across or rather along, not tilting to the side, making sure your tape is well positioned. Then from above the knee to the heel, down to the heel, keeping this tape straight down to the heel. That is for the vertical measurement. Then on the sleeve side, from this shoulder point, that is this point at which the arm joins the shoulder. In some people, it is not clear, but you try and find a point using your eyes to locate a point where you will start for the sleeve, not going too up or down, but get a particular position with your eyes. You get that with your eyes anyway, because in some people, it's kind of, some people have a too slanted a shoulder, but like this one is very prominent. This is the shoulder point, the shoulder point. This is where the shoulder ends. So I'll place the tape here and take the arm measurements. So from this point to at least the fullest point of the arm is 7 inches. For some, it is 6 inches, depending on how tall the person's arm is. So here it is 7 inches. You take the measurement. Then to just above the elbow, you take the measurement. So if you're taking a measurement for long sleeve, you ask your client to bend her arm like this. So bending the arm like this, you take the measurement this way. So you can also, if you can handle it, you can ask, the person can still keep the arm straight and you measure. But one thing with this one, keeping the arm straight, is after making the garment, the person may not be able to bend the arm well. But when you take the measurement with the arm bent, you give enough room. You give enough room for the measurement, and you continue to the wrist or wherever the length, whatever the desired length. So now for the horizontal measurements, we start with the shoulder. The shoulder, locating the shoulder point. Some measure from this bone that is at the base, from this bone that is at the base of the neck, from this bone to this shoulder point. Some do measurements like that and multiply by 2 to get the whole shoulder. But personally, I go all the way across the shoulder. I go all the way across the shoulder from one shoulder point to another shoulder point. I get the measurement. For me, it is this way. But if you can't, if the person's shoulder point is not so clear, you can just measure from this bone here to the shoulder point. So, next, the bust. You take the measurements at the fullest point of the bust, making sure that your tape runs across. Please. Making sure that your tape runs across at the bust level. This is where some people make mistakes. So if this tape goes down like this and you are across the bust, it won't give you the right measurement. So you make sure the tape runs across like this. Yeah. So you keep your tape like this. You keep your tape across the bust, the fullest point, making sure that it is well aligned at the back. Then, another very important measurement at this level is the nipple to nipple measurement. With this, you can help you determine the dart. So you just, most of the time, you use your eyes to balance the person. So with our model rather, we have her bust. Looking at it, you see her bust point is nipple to nipple measurement can be taken like this. So when you make a dart, it will balance. So 8 inches. Then under the bust, we've taken the vertical measurement. Under the bust, you take your tape across, making sure you have at least 2 fingers under the tape. That is in between the body and the tape. It gives for an allowance. But if you're new, very, very new to it, and you don't really know if you're getting it right, just place the tape on the body and use your hand here. Use your hand at this point to release it so that it wraps this index finger. With that, it can also go. So, but 2 fingers, putting your 2 fingers like this in between the body and the tape gives you enough allowance. Then at the stomach level, you do the same thing, making sure it is the tape is well aligned across at the back. So at the back, this is the stomach level at the back. And taking you back a little bit at the waist, you make sure it is well aligned also here at the waist. Okay. Then at the hip level, coming down to the hip, the fullest point of the hip is where you measure. The fullest point of the hip is where you keep the tape, making sure it runs across on top of the buttocks. Because if it goes this way, you will have a wrong measurement. But this is the way it will run across the buttocks over the hip point, where what I call hip point, that is the fullest point of the hip. The fullest point of the hip. Then there's one measurement that is necessary, but people usually omit it. But here, you ask your client where, if it is for skirts, for trousers, you ask your client where she places her skirts or her trouser. Having shown you, you place your tape at that point and measure the distance from that point to the hip point, to the fullest point of the hip. With this measurement, you will know where to place the hip, that is the curve, the hip curve, while you're drafting. Some people have low hip, while some have high hip point. So if you don't measure this and you're like, from this point like you guess it, like you see an adult is 9 inches. Some people's hip point are quite lower than 9 inches or are quite higher than 9 inches. So you take the measurement on the person, and if you don't measure and you just assume any measurement, when your client wears the clothes you make, what will happen? The person will place the skirt or the trousers where she usually keeps it. So there may be an excess or it won't fit in well. So the sleeve measurements now, there is the vertical measurement and the horizontal measurement. Just like I said initially, from the shoulder point to the fullest part of the arm, you take a round measurement. Take a round measurement, putting your first two fingers in between the body and the tip. It gives you a fitting measurement. Then to here, doing the same. Then here, this is 3/4. You do same. Then this is for long sleeve. I won't give you the exact measurement for the vertical because for some people their arm is short and some have long arm. But on the average, we usually have from the shoulder point to the fullest point is usually 7. Then from this shoulder point to here to above the elbow is usually between 11 and 12. Then to this point, to the 3/4 part of the arm, is usually between 14 and 15. Then to the fullest part, depending on how tall the person's hand is, the wrist point is usually between 22, 23. And for the very tall people, I've gotten up to 24.5 for the female. So, moving on, the trousers measurements. So first of all, you get the band for the trousers. The band for the trousers, then the hip is already there. Then the crotch, there's what we call the crotch. At this point, there is a flap that is usually sewn at this point of the trousers for the zip. So here is called the crotch. The crotch is the part of the trousers that goes this way to the back. So the crotch can be calculated from the hip, or it can be determined straight on the body. Usually I do both. I take the measurement on the person, then calculate it from the hip. I now know if I got the right thing. So taking the measurement from the hip, of course, if she's a female, I can go lower. So I ask her normally where she keeps her trousers. She shows me, and I place my tape from that point. I go a little bit, ask her to spread out her legs, just a little bit. I'll just go a little bit in. I mark it. It's 9. So when I now calculate her hip, that is hip, depending on how you want the crotch to be. So for a fitted trouser, the crotch is usually like hip divided by 4. But if it's a loose trouser, it can be hip up to divided by 3. So 4 by 4 is for a fitted trouser. So if the hip is like 40 and I divide 40 by 4, it gives me 10. So I now check the hip calculation and the one I got right on the body to know the disparity. If I have like about 1 inch disparity, I come in between. 10 instead of 10 now by the calculation, I use 9.5 because I got 9 on measuring on the body, and 10 by calculation, I use 9.5, and it usually works for me. Then the thigh. You measure the fullest part of the thigh for the trousers, the fullest part of the thigh, just about 3 inches below the hip. 3 inches below the hip, so that you get the fullest part. If you come down lower than there, you will have a small measurement that may not fit to this point, fit up to this point. So you measure 3 inches below the hip point on the person. Then on above the knee, I also measure above the knee, the round measurement, while I have taken the vertical measurement from the point she keeps her trousers to the above the knee. I don't measure on top of the knee because you must give room for the bend at the knee. So above the knee, you take still putting your 2 fingers in between and you take the measurement. Then moving down to the ankle, I measure the ankle. Here is a bit tricky because if you just put 2 fingers, you won't be able to get it. So I use, if the knee is like 16, or rather let me say for adult female like this, for a fitted trouser, I use 14 inches, 13 and half, 14 inches for the ankle round, while I've measured the trouser, the length. So I use 14 inches, 13 and half to 14 inches. Lastly, for the neck, you take, to measure the neck, you take the neck measurement close to the neck. Then a finger, the index finger, just between the leg is enough. That is if you want to have a very a choke neck like this.